This is episode 6 in my 2026 Summer Headspace series. This is a chance to revisit episodes from the previous school year during the summer months when you may have a little extra time. Beginning on August 31st, you will see new episodes with exciting new topics every Monday. For today, we're going to look back at teaching culture with purpose in the classroom. And we'll look back at episode 241 with practical ways to bring art to your classroom. Then episode 245, which is about language and culture through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And then episode 247, which is all about language learning through music and film. So let's jump in. Whether you're planning your first lesson or celebrating your 20th year in the language classroom, I understand exactly where you are. I'm Joshua Cabral, and I'm also a language teacher in my 29th year of teaching. Now, I also have the opportunity to support schools and teachers all across the country who are working towards increasing proficiency and building confidence in their students. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast with over 200 episodes of practical strategies tested in real classrooms just like yours and mine. So let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast today, and particularly during the summer when you are in your summer headspace. I just know that you do so many wonderful things that make you an incredible teacher, and listening to this podcast is one of those things. So thank you so very much. We are going to revisit 3 episodes that are all about teaching culture with purpose in your classroom. And the first one that I would recommend going back and listening to is episode 241. This was all about practical ways to bring art to your classroom. And this was a conversation with a teacher who does lots of art with lots of great ideas. And this was Courtney Bonino. And we talk about why art is such an effective entry point for language learning, especially for engaging students at different proficiency levels. And then I always like to have realistic things we can do in the classroom. So she shares how teachers can realistically add art into units they already teach, and then some small changes that teachers can make to start integrating art without adding more prep time. And then we look into some strategies for using the same piece of art with different proficiency levels and what that looks like for novice as opposed to, say, intermediate learners. Then we look at how teachers can keep the focus on communication and the kinds of prompts or tasks that generate the most meaningful language use when you are doing art in the classroom. And then she finally tells us about how she turns her class into an art gallery and how you can do the same and what it looks like in practice, even in a small or shared classroom space. So this is a great episode with Courtney Bonino for bringing art and the culture around art into your classroom. And then a great complementary episode is episode 245, and this was with Carmen Reyes. And in this episode, we talk about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We begin by explaining exactly what those Sustainable Development Goals are, why they were created, and then what makes these goals a very useful framework for teaching language and culture. And then how the Sustainable Development Goals help students move beyond vocabulary and grammar and see language learning as a way to understand global issues and perspectives. And I always like to get into the trenches. How are we going to do this in our classrooms? So Carmen really shares how we can adapt the Sustainable Development Goals so that they are meaningful and accessible for all levels. And she shares activities and resources that work especially well for integrating the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals while keeping the focus on communication in the target language, with lots of ideas for simple ways and practical ways to start using them right away in your classroom. And then a third episode on this idea of real culture in your classroom and doing it with a purpose is episode 247. And this was a conversation with Cyril Sanchez about language learning through music and film. And we talk about how music and film can be essential tools for language learning and cultural understanding, and not just something extra that you do in your classroom, and how teachers can use music and film to support comprehension and communication. Then I always have questions about what do we use? Where do you find the films? What are the best ones? So we get into a great conversation about selecting music and film that is age appropriate, culturally meaningful, and effective for language learning, and then also some pitfalls to avoid so you don't choose the wrong materials. And then getting really into what does it look like in the classroom. We talk a lot about tasks and routines that help move students from just simply enjoying the music or the film to actually using the language in meaningful ways, and what this looks like at the novice as well as more advanced levels. Lots of really simple strategies that you can try right away. And then Sybil shares some great advice for building confidence for you as the teacher using music and film regularly in your classroom. So these 3 episodes, all about art, the Sustainable Development Goals, music and film, really great ways to purposefully add culture to your classroom through these various mediums. So in the show notes, you will see the links to episodes 241, 245, and 247, so you can listen to them right there. And if you're looking for a little summer PD, be sure to look at my Ready for Tomorrow Quick Win courses. Each one is only about 30 minutes, and you will get repeatable frameworks you can use right away in your classroom. You can see all 15 topics that are available on my website, wlclassroom.com/quickwin, or the link is right there in the show notes for you. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And let's stay connected on social media. You can find me at WL Classroom pretty much everywhere. You'll also find lots of ideas, suggestions, and resources on my website, wlclassroom.com. Now stay curious, keep learning, and continue the great work you do inspiring and supporting your students.